All right, get ready, because we're going deep, deep into chapters 14 and 15 of Underground to Canada.
A pivotal moment for sure.
Yeah, Julie and Liza's story, right on the edge of freedom.
We had a listener write in asking for, well, for a closer look.
And we've got a lot to work with, excerpts from the book itself,
Of course, a study guide to give us some direction.
and even, believe it or not, an FAQ.
Should be interesting to see what kinds of questions people have about this part of the story.
Definitely. So, for anyone just joining us, Julie and Liza, they've made it to the Ohio River.
That dividing line between, well,
Slavery and freedom, literally.
they find refuge, at least for a little while, at Jeb and Ella Brown's cabin.
But that moment of peace doesn't last long, does it?
Not at all, no. Danger comes knocking. Literally.
Sheriff Starkey.
And another slave catcher.
Determined to, well,
To recapture any runaway slaves they can find.
talk about a sudden shift in mood. 1 minute it's peaceful, the next.
It's pure terror. The tension
Ah.
just ratchets up immediately.
Absolutely. And you really see Liza's character shine through in this moment. I mean, she's not just hiding in fear.
No, she's ready to fight.
She even says she'll swim across the river, even though she can't swim.
That says a lot about her spirit. She could give in to the fear, the despair, but instead...
Defiance.
Exactly. Like the river itself. Powerful, unstoppable.
I love that connection. And we have to talk about that river signal, like something out of a spy movie.
Ingenious, the call of a hoot owl.
To communicate across the river in the dark.
It shows how essential ingenuity and trust were for the Underground Railroad, every person involved. Relying on subtle signals like that, knowing a mistake could be...
Disaster.
Exactly.
And then there's Jeb and Ella Brown. Not just hiding the girls, actively distracting the slave catchers, offering them food, making conversation.
As if nothing's wrong.
I mean, the level of self-control.
Remarkable. To stay so calm, so collected with that kind of danger.
They're like, what, master chess players? Thinking Severin moves ahead.
Anticipating their opponent's every move.
And in all this, Liza. She faints. After all that defiance.
It's a reminder that even the strongest have their limits. This journey, this escape, it wasn't just about physical endurance.
Emotionally and psychologically draining.
Exactly.
And Julie, she's so worried about her friend. You see how deep their bond is.
It's more than just being escape partners. They're each other's lifeline.
And then the river crossing itself at night.
Darkness adding to the suspense, the danger.
Imagine being in their place, unable to swim, reliant on Jeb's skill and the cover of darkness.
It's like a leap of faith into the unknown.
And then, on the other side, a white conductor.
Showing how diverse, how collaborative the Underground Railroad really was.
Julie says it best. The helping hands, those are the rails and engines of the whole thing.
Not about individual heroes, but a community united by a common purpose.
And that purpose goes beyond just helping people escape.
It's about dismantling an unjust system.
We leave them hidden in a drawer under a horse-drawn cart.
Literally underground.
They're told they'll reach Levi Coffin's safe house by morning, if all goes well.
That if hangs heavy, doesn't it?
Danger's still lurking. So before we jump into those study guide questions,
What are your initial thoughts on these chapters?
for me, it's that constant back and forth between fear and hope, those harrowing escape scenes, the threat of capture.
But also those glimpses of humanity,
Mm-hmm.
kindness, courage,
Absolutely. Even in the darkest moments, the human spirit, it finds a way.
and Smucker's use of metaphors, the river signal, the train imagery.
It elevates the story beyond just a historical account. It becomes this reflection on freedom, on collective action, on the strength of the human spirit.
Timeless.
Exactly. All right, let's dig into those study guide questions next, see what other insights we can uncover. Ready?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Okay, let's dive into these study guide questions then, shall we?
Sounds good to me.
A lot to unpack here. The first one is about the river signal, why it was so important. I mean, it's more than just like a clever plot device, right?
Oh, absolutely. It really speaks to the secrecy, the ingenuity of the Underground Railroad. Think about it. Communication was incredibly risky.
Especially across state lines.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. So a simple hoot owl call.
Could be the key to freedom.
Exactly. Jeb uses it to make sure it's safe to cross. Just a subtle sound in the middle of the night highlights the need for covert communication, the trust that was placed in every single person involved.
Wow. Okay, so then the next question asks about how Jeb and Ella Brown helped Julie and Liza escape from the slave catchers. Talk about grace under pressure.
More than just kindness, it's real bravery. They put themselves in danger, no hesitation, offering food and drink to the slave catchers.
Knowing the girls are hidden right there,
Just feet away.
like a high-stakes poker game.
Great analogy. That composure, that quick thinking, it buys precious time, enough for the girls to get to the roof, hide.
The Browns, they're like the embodiment of the Underground Railroad.
Ordinary people rising to the occasion with incredible courage.
Okay, this next question, this one is about Liza. It asks us to describe her reaction when the slave catchers show up. And what that tells us about her. She's such a firecracker.
She's something else, isn't she?
Even though she's smaller than Julie, maybe more vulnerable in some ways, she doesn't back down.
Not one bit.
Ready to fight. Even to swim across the river. Even though,
Even though she can't swim.
Exactly. It's like that refusal to be captured.
An unyielding spirit.
It reminds me of, like, Harriet Tubman. Remember that quote? I freed 1,000 slaves. I could have freed 1,000 more if only they knew they were slaves.
Powerful.
Liza, she embodies that. Knowing her own worth, demanding her freedom.
That inner fire, that refusal to give up, it fueled so many successful escapes.
Okay, now for a real nail-biter of a question. What was Julie and Liza's plan if they were discovered on the roof? I mean, talk about a desperate situation.
Cornered, nowhere to go. But even then, they came up with a plan. Risky, yes, but resourceful.
Did they, like, Master Roof ninjas?
Yeah.
Outsmart the slave catchers with some crazy moves?
Even bolder, actually. They were going to jump off the roof, run for the river,
Seriously?
hoping to find Jeb's boat, make a run for it.
Wow. A leap of faith, literally.
Shows how desperate they were, how much they were willing to risk for a chance at freedom.
And for them, I guess, the unknown dangers of the river.
Were better than the certainty of being caught.
Right.
It's about understanding that freedom, well, it's worth risking everything for.
Okay, now for a question that always gets to me. What happens to Liza after the slave catchers leave? How does Julie react?
It's a tough moment. Shows just how much they've been through.
Right.
After that close call, the adrenaline fades and Liza collapses, faints from pure exhaustion. It reminds us that this journey wasn't just about, about physical strength.
Right.
The emotional toll, the mental strain. It was immense.
Constantly looking over your shoulder, never knowing who to trust.
Exactly.
And Julie, she's just beside herself with worry. It really shows you the depth of their friendship, don't you think?
Absolutely. That bond between them, it gives them strength.
It's like they're two halves of a whole, supporting each other every step of the way.
Yeah.
Okay, next up, why does Julie Tronzil think of Jeb and Ella Brown as her friends forever? It seems like such a strong feeling. After, what, only a short time together?
It's about the impact they had. Julie and Liza, they'd only ever known cruelty, exploitation.
Right.
Then they meet the Browns, people who show them kindness, risk their lives for them. It's transformative.
Like a glimpse of a different world.
Exactly. A world where humanity, compassion, those things exist. For Julie Lee, the Browns, they represented something new, something better, where kindness isn't a weakness, but a force for good.
It's a turning point for them, I think.
Yeah.
Not just geographically, but emotionally.
I agree.
They're not just running anymore. They're starting to believe that a better future is actually possible.
Hope.
Right. Now, there's a question about this sentence. These helping hands is the rails and the engines of the Underground Railroad. It's such a powerful image, so evocative.
It really captures the essence of the movement, doesn't it? It wasn't about individual heroes.
It was about a network of people working together.
Exactly. Those helping hands, they're the conductors, the station masters, the people providing food and shelter, spreading information, risking their lives. All those small acts of kindness, they added up to something much bigger.
A collective effort.
That's a message that resonates even today, don't you think?
Absolutely. We can all play a part in creating a more just world. Okay, what about the mood at the end of Chapter 15? How does Smucker leave us feeling?
Hopeful, definitely, but also apprehensive.
Right.
The girls have crossed the Ohio River, a huge accomplishment, but their journey is far from over.
It's like they're holding their breath, clinging to hope, but bracing themselves for what might come next.
And that's reinforced in the text itself. Remember that voice speaking through the boards above the drawer.
Right.
If all goes well, we'll reach the home of Levi Coffin in Cincinnati by morning. If we are stopped, don't make a sound. That if is so heavy.
Full of uncertainty.
Smucker does a brilliant job of keeping us on the edge of our seats, making us feel that tension.
She really gets the emotional complexity of their experience. The triumphs, but also those lingering fears.
It's a reminder that the fight for freedom, well, it's often long and difficult.
Okay, this next question asks how the setting of the chapter adds to the suspense and the danger. Smucker's really good at using setting to evoke emotions, isn't she?
She goes beyond just describing the environment. It's like the setting itself becomes a character, shaping the narrative, heightening the tension.
I like that.
The darkness of the night, the isolation of the cabin, the sheer vastness of the river.
It all makes you feel so vulnerable.
Exactly. The darkness, it's like a shroud hiding both the girls and their pursuers, adding to the uncertainty. And the river itself, it's a path to freedom, yes, but also dangerous, full of unknowns.
Freedom doesn't come easy, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, last question about this section, I think. It asks about Jula singing Go Down Moses. What did that spiritual tell us about her, about how she's feeling?
It's more than just a song. It's an expression of hope, resilience, resistance.
Right.
Remember, spirituals like Go Down Moses, they were deeply connected to the experience of slavery. Coded messages woven into the lyrics.
Longing for freedom, faith in a better future.
Exactly. For Julie, singing the song, it's a way to connect her own struggle to something bigger, to draw strength from the legacy of those who came before her.
It's like she's finding solace in their shared struggle.
The power of music, to transcend boundaries, to provide a sense of community, of shared purpose.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Go Down Moses becomes this anthem of hope, a testament to the human spirit.
The belief that a better world is possible, even in the face of darkness and despair.
Wow, we really covered a lot of ground there. But there's still more to explore. That FAQ, it promises an even broader perspective on the Underground Railroad and its historical context.
Shall we?
Let's do it. Okay, so let's move on to this FAQ then. Zoom out a bit.
Get a wider perspective, yeah.
It starts off by asking point blank, what was the Underground Railroad?
I mean, it sounds almost like too good to be true, doesn't it?
It does have a certain mystique to it, yeah. But it was very real. A network of routes and safe houses used by enslaved African Americans to escape
To freedom, right.
to freedom in the northern United States and Canada most often.
So not like a literal railroad with tracks and trains and all that.
A common misunderstanding. It got its name because of the secrecy, like an underground movement, and the coded language. Conductors guiding the escaping slaves, stations serving in safe houses.
Amazing how they created this whole system under the threat of, well, of everything.
The risks were enormous, absolutely.
Speaking of danger, this FAQ asks about what dangers Julio and Liza faced during their escape. And I mean, we've already seen Sheriff Starkey and
His cronies.
yeah. But there was more to it than that, right?
Oh, absolutely. The threat of capture was constant. Slave catchers everywhere, and then hunger, exhaustion.
The elements.
Right, they're traveling on foot, mostly.
Yeah.
At night.
Relying on the kindness of strangers. It was physically and emotionally grueling. And psychologically, too. Don't forget that. The fear, the separation from loved ones, the uncertainty of it all, to keep going in the face of that.
Takes incredible strength. Speaking of which, this FAQ also asks about Jeb and Ella Brown, what role they played. They're more than just, like, good Samaritans, aren't they?
They're heroes, in my book.
Right. Risking their own lives to help those girls. The food, the shelter, hiding them from the slave catchers, and then getting them across that river.
They embody the spirit of the Underground Railroad. Ordinary people making extraordinary choices.
Choosing to do what's right, even when it's dangerous.
Exactly. Their story is a powerful reminder, even small acts of kindness.
They can make a difference.
A big difference.
So back to that river, the Ohio River. This FAQ asks how it helped the escaping slaves, how they used it. I mean, it's more than just a physical barrier, isn't it?
Definitely. It's a dividing line between the slave states and the free states. Crossing it, that was a crucial step.
It's so risky.
The ultimate risk. But for many, it was also symbolic. A break from the past, leaving behind a life of bondage.
Moving towards hope.
Exactly.
This FAQ also has a question about communication. Secret communication. Which makes sense, I mean.
Secrecy was essential.
Absolutely.
No.
So how did they do it?
Coded messages, for one. Disguise routes. A whole culture built on trust, on discretion. Remember the river signal?
The owl call, right?
That's just one example. They used everyday objects, activities, quilts with hidden patterns, songs with double meanings.
So clever.
Always vigilant, thinking ahead, finding ways to communicate without giving themselves away.
There's also a question about imagery in the book. What kind of imagery Smucker uses to describe the Underground Railroad?
Hmm.
She's so good with words, painting these vivid pictures.
She's a master storyteller, that's for sure.
So what kind of imagery stands out?
A lot of train metaphors, railways, even though, of course.
What wasn't a real railroad?
Right. But the imagery works. The train moving steadily towards a destination.
Towards freedom.
Exactly. And remember that line about the helping hands being the rails and engines of the Underground Railroad?
Yes.
That captures it perfectly, the collective effort, everyone working together, no matter how small their role.
All contributing to this larger goal.
The freedom.
Okay, now the FAQ gets a bit more serious. It asks about the risks people took to help others escape slavery. Makes you think.
It does. What would you do in that situation?
Right. Imprisonment, fines, being ostracized, even violence, and that Fugitive Slave Act of 1850.
Made it a federal crime to help runaway slaves, even in free states.
They were breaking the law, risking everything to do what they believed was right.
Driven by empathy, by a deep sense of justice, they saw the evil of slavery, and they had to act.
Incredible courage. The last question from this FAQ asks about themes in Underground to Canada. There are so many, aren't there?
So many important messages. Hope, resilience, courage, compassion.
The desire for freedom, the power of collective action.
It's a story about the human spirit, our ability to endure, to overcome even the most unimaginable hardship.
And it forces us to confront the horrors of slavery, doesn't it?
Absolutely. But it also shows us that even in the darkest of times,
There's light, there's hope.
human connection, courage, the fight for a more just world.
It's a powerful story, and I think a timely one. We've covered so much in this deep dive. The emotional journey of Julie and Liza, the bravery of those involved in the Underground Railroad, the enduring themes of courage, resilience, and the fight for freedom.
And hopefully we've answered some questions for our listeners, inspired you to think about the ways we can all contribute to a more just and compassionate world.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning,